Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'dvarei. Amen. Okay, good morning, Chevra. On this wonderful Yom Ha'atzmaut day, B'siyata d'Shmaya, we continue our journey through Sefer Likutei Moharan with Torah Nun Dalet, which is quite lengthy. I'm coming to realize it is a pretty lengthy teaching. We've done quite a bit of it already, and we're really getting toward the end, the latter part of Torah Nun Dalet this morning, the heart and soul of the Torah, really. An incredibly beautiful segment, B'siyata d'Shmaya, which I'm looking forward to getting into. Today's shir is sponsored by our dear friend Reb Bernard Bollag, nishmas, his father Avimayr Moshe Ezriel ben Yaakov, also by Yitzchak Gedalia ben Ilanet for the schus of Nasha Gabriel ben Chava and Avram Shlomo ben Ilanet, and by Zev Klein, nishmas, his parents of Bryndel bas Simcha and Ya'akov ben Yeshעיהו, also for shidduchim for Yehudis, Adina bas Elisheva Rochel, Dovid ben Fayga Kayla, Yonatan, Shimon ben Hadassah, Ronit, Netanel ben Meechal Mahnaz, Dovid ben Yael, Noach, Avram ben Rizal, Zev ben Bryndel, and all the singles of Klal Yisrael should all find their zivug. Also dedicated as a schus for Refuah Shlema for Chaim Yeshua ben Chaya Miriam. And of course, Yom HaZikaron yesterday, Yom Ha'atzmaut today, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect all of the Yidden, our brothers and sisters who are in Eretz Yisrael, paving the way for Kibbutz Galias, for all of us to be able to get back. It should be Kasher Shal Kayama with that land, Be'ezus Hashem, and safety, security. And we should only hear Besuras Tovas on that front and on all the fronts of Klal Yisrael, and really for all of humanity, we should only hear Besuras Tovas. Okay, so now, let us continue with Torah and Dalet. Very brief review from yesterday. We were learning why it is that the Koyach HaMedameh, this disembodied force that was created Erev Shabbos Ben Hashmashos, but was not given a time to be able to have a body, why it floats around the world and specifically looks to rest upon the hearts and minds of those who are the Pishoina Halachos. And we learned about those who are teaching halachas, are creating the worlds, right? And so that's where these disembodied souls are going to seek a body, because that's where the energy of creation now resides. And then we learned this incredible remez from Parai and his dreams, right? The chaloim, the koyach hadam seeks hishanais, to rest upon a peace shaina halachas ki nachan adavar melikim umemar elikim la'asaisei, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created that spirit too quickly and it seeks a body. We learned about parai, chalaim parai, echad is gematria, ahava is the midah of chesed, and so the chalaim parai, the koyach hadimyan, can cause a person to fall into echadhu, can cause a person to fall into lower levels of ahava, which is the aspect of which is the aspect of the ahava, of Yeridas, the avas nefulis, right? Of the lower midah of ava that falls down. And then we learned the remez in the psukim from Hosea, nidmu ami mibli adas, when Klal Yisrael fall away from das into a consciousness of lashon hara, of ayin hara, and that gives them nidmu. That's the koyach hamedameh. The psukim continue. Ki ata das masta ve'ema ascha mikahin li. That was the aspect of ava nefula, where a person finds it difficult to connect to the avas Hashem and everything, because they are now in a dual mindset of being able to perceive chesed on the one hand, and on the other hand pure mishpat, right? Without being able to perceive the chesed Hashem that's behind the mishpat as well. And that leads to a consciousness of shikha, which is how the Torah began, where the Rebbe tells us we need to stay in zikaron, to remember Alma Da'aseh, and not to fall into shikha. Eshkach banecha gam ani, which is the aspect of canceling the ben zachar. Then we went back to Parai, and we learned about how Parai took all of the male children, the ben zachar, which is the bechina of zikaron, and he threw them where? Into the Ya'ar, right? Which is the river Nile. What's that hinted to in the rivers of Sefer Bereshis right in the beginning is Pishain. Pishain is Pishain halachas, because that's where the Koyach HaMedameh, which is the drowning of Ben Zachar, which is remembering. So the energy of Shikha, of Dimyan, of filling in the gaps, of not seeing things for what they are, of standing at a distance, Mamela, that's where that spirit seeks to rest. Now, we turn over the page. Now we're on Samach Beis Amud Beis, and the Heilige Tzaddik writes like this: Chusi Agadolenu Ulachnia HaKoyach HaMedameh. In order to be machnia the koyach hamedameh, And the remez over here, the diak over here, is that he doesn't say levatel koyach hamadame because we don't want to be mevatel the koyach hamadame. The koyach hamadame, as he's about to say, is a very, very powerful and important thing. Hashem gave us the koyach hamadame for a reason. It's supposed to be elevated. It's supposed to interpret. It's just supposed to interpret things in the right way, right? When I was giving shiurim in Beis Gabriel, that fateful Hanukkah where all this really started, right, a few years ago. So we were learning over there about how emunah relies on Dimyan. Because the world as we experience it is just a set of facts that are open to interpretation. We spoke a little bit about this past Thursday night as well, right? In that shir on Hayyim, on Sfira. It's up to us which path we want to choose. We get to interpret the facts of this world. Emunah is an interpretation. That's why it's called Emunah and not Idea. Because we don't know it, right? This is something we choose to believe. And so we have a Koyach HaDimyan that only is supposed to be Muchna, right? Is not supposed to be Nizbatel, right? It needs to be Machnia itself to the Seichel, and then it needs to be utilized appropriately in the Bechina of Emes, and then Ve'emunah Kol Zois. Emes is Seichel, then built on Seichel, you're able to have Emunah, right? And that's the inyan of the Medame, that's Nisvarer, as we're going to learn. Says the Rebbe, how do you do that? Well, Yedei Bechinas Yad. It is through the aspect of Yad, which we're going to learn about in a minute. Bechinas, the Yad Hanavim Adameh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I am envisioned, I am imagined. The Nevi'im have a likeness of me beyond Hanavim Adameh. Right? So on a surface level, it's a metaphor. Right? Biyad Hanavim Adameh means to say by way of the Nevi'im. It doesn't mean their actual hand, right? Al pi pshat. But the Rebbe is saying sort of a remez, which is like more pshat than pshat, because it actually says, no, well, it says biyad hanavim adameh. There's something here that has to do with their yadayim. So what's yadayim? The yad bechinas simcha, bebechinus smachdem, bechol mishlach yedchem. The hands have a connection to simcha, because it says usmachdem, bechol mishlach Yedchem. You shall rejoice with everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends to your hand. When we bring up our bikurim, when we bring up our first fruits, I believe that's the context, to the Beis HaMikdash, we rejoice in what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. So now the Rebbe, having connected purified Koyach HaDimyan from the standpoint of prophecy to Simcha, because it says, Usmachtem echol mishlach yedchem, says the Rebbe, so like what's the connection between simcha and hands? Right? Where do we see that hands produce simcha? Says the tzaddik, Ze bechinas kli zemer shemignatnin biyad. This is an inyan of playing an instrument with your yadayim. Shal yedei ze shoyer hanavua al hanavim. Because this is exactly how the Nevi'im used their clarified Koyach HaDimyan to be able to channel prophecy down to the world. K'man shekasav, as we know in the pasuk, Elisha, Chuli minagein, right? Find me a minagein. I believe when he saw, was it the nation of Moav, and he got angry at them because they're idol worshippers and pagans, and because of his anger, he fell away from Nevuah. But he needed Nevuah back. And so what did he say? Va'ata Chuli minagein. Right? Right? When the menagin began to play, somehow, some way, this opened up the koyach hamedameh to be able to see the world in a more beautiful way. It's incredible, even cinematically, right? In films, there's always music in the background. Music is used to evoke different feelings. You can have the same scene of footage playing, and it all depends on what the music is in the background, which will contextualize what the person who is taking the video, right, or producing the video intends for the viewer to feel at that given moment in time, right? Music has a contextualizing capacity. Beyond that, fascinatingly enough, in experiences of altered consciousness, right, either through psychedelics, which we spoke about in the beginning of our series, right, people are using plant medicines to be able to seek healing. It was just basically legalized and in terms of research in America, which is a huge win for people who have been fighting for this for many, many years since it was outlawed essentially in the 60s. a huge win, right? So ibogaine and all these things are going to be used as they have been used. I mean, first for veterans and for people who are, have severe mental illness, but it'll probably trickle down as we get more data, because the people who have been doing scientific research have done so under wraps because it's theoretically illegal and a huge battle. But there are people who are mamish helped, right? Mamish helped people, addictions for years. I know personally, chaver who have been completely and entirely healed. There are risks as well. Everything has to be done carefully and sensitively, and it's a huge topic on many levels, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, societally. There are many, many different layers to this topic, but it's a thing that's happening. Some might argue it's happening too much in our communities, and it's a free-for-all, but it's a thing that's absolutely happening, and it's an extraordinarily powerful tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the world. Whether a person seeks altered experiences of consciousness with psychedelic medicine or holotropic breath work, which is another way, natural way, much safer way, for a person to enter into altered states of consciousness, which is very intense patterns of breathing. Both of these journeys that a person can take inward and upward and outward into this mysterious realm inside of our own minds need to be guided with music in the background. This is crucially important. Again, the scientific studies have not been able to isolate the various elements because you're dealing fundamentally with a shamanic tradition, right? So that means that these are things that have been practiced in in South America and the Americas for thousands of years. And so they basically lifted that whole methodology and brought it to the West. But they have not scientifically proven. That's just the way that they live. This is the way that they heal. Right? They have, shamanic healers who sit with people and they do, different medicines, ayahuasca and so on. And now the whole thing is being lifted to the West. And here we're subjecting these traditions, to sort of rigorous scientific standards. So I'm not sure if they've isolated like which elements do you absolutely need, which elements don't you need. But the music guides the journey. That's for sure true. And the music, part of the job of the guide is to curate, because some of these experiences can take many hours, right? 8 hours or more, depending on dosage. So a person's knocked out and in a comatose state, and their inner journey is going to be mediated by the music that's being played. And when there is gentle music, that's going to evoke a certain gentle part of the experience. When they need to bring up and interact with negative and difficult, challenging emotions, the music will specifically be curated for that purpose. It's an incredible thing. That means that the journey of consciousness is going to literally be guided by the music that we're hearing. Music is extraordinarily impactful. One of the experiences that people often have with these substances or in any state of altered consciousness is what's called synthesia, where they can see the sounds. They can experience the music. It isn't just like music that they're hearing. People have said that it's almost as if they're hearing music for the very first time. That somehow music is really more than we think music is. It's just that over the years we become so encrusted and our hearts have become so layered over with just, this worldliness that we're really detached from what music really fundamentally is and what music was really capable of doing. And you see that in the psukim. Vaya kinagin am nagin. Maybe music was so rare. Like today we hear music everywhere. You go into your car, you put on music, and music in Spotify. It's one of those things where like we for familiarity, because we have it so often, it's lost its special meaning. Gesundheit strike, right? Colors is the same thing. There's a very important piece. There's a person actually in this topic of psychedelics. It was one of the first names that was associated with this. His name is Aldous Huxley. He wrote a very famous book called Doors of Perception. And he wrote a number of other very important, famous, interesting books. One of his books is called Heaven and Hell. It's a very, very small little book, and it's on a number of different topics. One segment that he has over there is about art, and about the way that in his presentation, art used to be, in his words, transportative. Art wasn't just like, it's a nice thing to have in your wall. Art, because of its rarity, because people never saw colors like that, because they lived in dirt houses with wooden, and just smoke of the chimney, and everything was dull and drab, and they didn't have dyes to make beauty, unless you were a king. Regular people wore plain things. You didn't see colors like that. So a painting was a meditative experience. You looked at a painting, it transported you somewhere. It did something to your consciousness. And then he contrasts that with, whatever he was living in the 1950s, I think, England, because that's where he was from. He eventually moved to California, became a film director or something like that, or film writer. And he says, everywhere you go, there's flashing neon signs and Coca-Cola, with its bright red packaging, and this has gotten all the worse, in today's day and age. And he says, so color is meaningless now. And it no longer does to us what it was supposed to do to us. I believe, that the same is true with music. That when we listen to music today in our regular state of consciousness, we're not actually listening to music. That we're missing something fundamental. Music was supposed to open your koyach hamedame. When you listen to music in an altered state of consciousness, you can begin to taste what music might have been for Elisha. You begin to taste what music might have been, we're going to learn in a minute, for Shaul HaMelech, what music might have been for our Avos and Imais, who didn't hear music all that often. When music came, it opened up a new portal in their minds. It really did. And that, I believe that's what's being described. Again, Elisha's way beyond anybody who's sitting and tripping on ayahuasca, obviously. Because there's already a clarified Koyach HaMedama to begin with. Memela, what he sees is going to be a lot more accurate. It's a huge sugya, not getting into, whether people see are real, how trustworthy is it. It's a huge sugya, not for now. But music is definitely an incredibly impactful point to be able to open up inner dimensions of people's psyche and consciousness and bring them into a whole new world. And that's what we're learning over here, I believe. This is what caused prophecy to rest on the prophets. Again, now how does this work? So the Heilige Rebbe says this, Ki akli hu is sasfus haruach. Kli, meaning the instrument that's being played. Interestingly enough, it has to do with, he's going to say in a minute, it's a string instrument. It sounds very much like a guitar, but it's probably also a harp. But it sounds very much like a guitar, which has become the weapon of choice for kumsitz players everywhere. You hardly see a person who's like running a kumsitz with a keyboard. It's a guitar, right? And he's describing, he's for sure describing a string instrument. It sounds you'll tell me, it sounds more like a guitar than a harp, to be honest. See, he says, asfus haruach. A instrument is the gathering together, at least in potential, of various vibrations, ruach. Right? That's how sound is produced. It echoes within the drum, right, of the instrument, the hollow. Every instrument has a hollow, even a violin, right, is hollow on the inside. Any string instrument, I think somebody might be ringing. The guy's downstairs. Okay, right. A guitar or a harp. Does a harp also have a hollow on the inside?
Well, it is just.
It's just a hollow.
Yeah, it only has a frame.
I'm remembering now. If a harp.
A harp is it's just a frame.
A cello for sure does, just a gigantic, oversized violin. Okay, so he says an instrument in potential is mixed with positive and negative vibrations. Because on the one hand, there's a ruach toiva. On the other hand, there's a atzvus ruach. There's a depressive ruach. Ruach necheya. A lowly spirit. Ruach ra. There can be a bechina of atzvus. Maybe somebody just go check what's going on. Yeah, it could be. Kenemar, sometimes the code doesn't work. Kenemar b'Shaul, like it says about Shaul, ubi asatu ruach ra. When Shmuel anointed David HaMelech, this made Shaul understandably very, very sad, very upset. He was tormented. Ubi asatu, interesting word. He was tormented by a ruach ra, by an evil spirit. But on the other hand, v'yesh ruach taiva. There's also a positive ruach. David HaMelech himself says, Ruchacha toiva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your positive spirit, tancheni be'eretz mishar, will lay me down to rest in Eretz Mishar, in the proper, steadfast land. V'hu b'chinas ruach nevuah ruach hakodesh. So we find there's atzvus ruach on the one hand, there's ruach hakodesh on the other hand. But when there's the mixture of toiv and ra, that's not mamish nevuah. A person needs, just like a dream, to interpret. Right? That's what, again, psychedelic experiences, for example, or states of altered consciousness are just incredibly intense dreams. Right? They're not different than a dream. It's just instead of having like a foggy notion and you wake up, it's more real than real. Right? In other words, when you go to that place, from that perspective, this was the dream. And that is, but it's still a mixture of Tov and Ra, generally speaking. Because our minds are Tov and Ra. Just like a person has a dream. They can't come back and run their life based on what they saw the night before, because, like the Gemara in Brachas tells us in the 9th parak, every person's dream is Me'or of Tov and Ra. Sure, there could be some emes there, so be a lot of sheker there, which is a reason, by the way, that many people are very skeptical about these things, because there's a danger of a person coming back, and because they saw in their mind that Nebuch, it could happen this way, that they absolutely have to divorce their wife, right? And they feel that they were Meechal and Avuah and Hashemayim, Chas v'Shalom, they can come back and make horrible decisions. Amish.
That's massive, though.
What's that?
That's massive risk, though.
Massive. Again, I'm not... massive risk.
I don't interrupt the shit, but I know someone who's in... I don't understand any of this, but I spent a Yom Tov with someone who's involved with this, and he was very for it. Always a big champion for it. And then there'd be instances exactly as you described.
Yeah.
And it's actually got him to say, I actually can't get involved in this because I've actually seen people making horrific
decisions. It could be a massive risk. Instead of, for me personally, saying I can't be involved in this at all, to me it just means there needs to be education, integration afterwards, guidance. It has to be done incredibly carefully, and it's not for everybody. A person has to be in a situation where they actually need it, and aren't just seeking an experience, which is part of the challenge that's happening because it entered into our culture. It's in vogue, and it's the cool thing to do. So everybody goes away for an ayahuasca retreat, and comes back. And these things are lo pashut. It's the most powerful experience you'll ever have in your entire life. It could be l'toiv, it could be l'mutav, right? So it has to be done in a sober-minded, healthy way. So there's danger there, because it's more of Tov. I can see lots of things. Person can come back and think he's Mashiach. It can happen like that.
And there's danger in learning Torah as well. You see many bochrim who just go to yeshiva and think everything has to be done with balance. And
this is quite a bit more dangerous than Baba Basra, to be honest. Baba Basra could be very dangerous, but ayahuasca could be very, very dangerous. So I don't, again, we're not passing, but the klal is things have to be done in the right way. That's no question about that, especially something of this level potency. So the Rebbe says it's not nevuas emes. Again, it could be beneficial because there could be,
Sometimes it's not. You go into the altered state. That's not the real place. Maybe you're saying maybe that is a real place, but even you talk about and coming back.
That's what we learned in Torah Dalet, right? That even a person who but this is the again, lot to talk about on that topic. I'm just pointing out that the Rebbe says over here, person who's koyach hamadam is not mevurar. Wow, good morning, great to see you. Is going to have an experience. Get the man a book, right? Is going to be a mixture of Tov and Ra. It's going to be a mixture of Tov and Ra. Eina yachal lekabel nevuas emes, not able to receive a clear prophecy. V'al kain therefore ksiv v'Shaul. It says about Shaul vayisnabe. Right, he happened upon a place where Shmuel was teaching his Bnei Neviim, and the spirit of prophecy came upon him by Yisnabe v'yipal arim, and he fell down, he stripped off his clothes, Shalom Melech, and he laid down on the floor prophesying. Appears Rashi, and Rashi says, Lashem Meshuk, it went crazy. Because it was mixed in with Atzvus Ruach, it was mixed in with Ruach Shtus, which is also, again, it's hard to know how to compare what we're experiencing now to states of prophecy. We don't know what prophecy looks like. We know what a psychedelic experience looks like. We don't know what prophecy looks like. So it's really impossible for us to say anything about whether they're bechalal in the same category of experience or not. Right? There are reason to believe that there is some tzad dimyan, but these things we don't know. We don't have a navi to tell us about nevuah, right, or non-nevuah. But one thing is for sure is that what we've learned, right, again, in the research that has been done since the 60s, is that mindset, right, what's called set and setting, right, the mindset with which a person comes into those experiences is going to have, again, a massive impact on whether it's a good trip, right, which can be positive and beneficial, or a bad trip, which can also, by the way, be positive and beneficial, but can also wreak havoc in a person's life. So Shaul entered into his, again, lahavdil, perhaps, or not, I don't know, lahavdil, perhaps, into his nevuah spirit in Atzvos. He's describing a bad trip, right? That's what happened to him over here. Rashi says, Meshuga. Why? Because he entered into it in a state of atzvus. He was seized by the darkness. However, if there's music in the background, that's the point, right? If it's being guided by music, the person playing the music has the capacity to separate the good vibrations, the good vibes. Right? This is like a very 60s shir. I mean, it's just very... That's what he's... Again, I'm reading what he's...
That's what
he's right. And you'd think he wrote this in Berkeley, in 1964. He wrote this in Uman 280 years ago. He says you have to get the good vibes out. And that's it, right? Biyadis a ruach taiva, ruach nevuah, mitoich atzvus ruach. No bad vibes here, right? That's it. You have to take away the bad vibrations, right? The ruach ra, and you have to get good energy. That's mamish what it means. I don't think I'm reading into it. I'm just reading you the words. I don't know how else to read it. Now here's the important part. V'tzarich li es yodea nagin. This is a really important thing. A person needs to know how to play an instrument well. There are some, it's like a contemporary, koheles, like Shlomo Melech, like hevel, like gamze hevel. Okay, here's a hevel. Okay, people who think they can play an instrument but actually cannot play an instrument. Gamze hevel. Okay, a person needs to know where they are from the standpoint of instrument playing, and if they cannot play an instrument, they should not play the instrument, at least not in public. But that's one of the challenges as a person who hopefully can play an instrument quasi well. People want to join and they want to bring their instruments, and you can't give everybody a an interview, audition before they join your kumsitz. But I always think in the pasuk like heitivu nagin besura, like that word is really crucial. Heitivu nagin besura, like play trumpet but play it well. For God's sake, heitivu nagin besura. I always think of that every time I read that pasuk. Play an instrument, but play it. Heitivu. So the Rebbe says you got to know how to play. But tzarich li es yodea nagin. You have to know. You have to play it well. But what the Rebbe means over here is, of course, on a metaphoric level. It's just a bit of a joke, but it's definitely serious. It's also a bit of a joke. You know what instrumentation, what playing an instrument really means? It means the ability to connect this good note together with that good note in such a way that the binyan that you're building, which becomes a melody, which is incredibly deep, is a positive, uplifting, inspiring structure that can actually bring out your toiv, as opposed to the opposite. Reb Nassim writes in Likutei Halachos that Rabbi Nachman told him that the chachmas hamuzika, which is what he writes over there, the wisdom of understanding music is the deepest wisdom in the world. That's what Reb Nassim writes. Rabbi Nachman told him it's the greatest wisdom beyond all wisdoms is chachmas hamuzika.
They were living mamish at the height.
Right, you're saying classical of music in the world. I don't know if they would have listened to that music. That would have been, maybe in the category of, the Menagnin She'inim Ksherim. Don't know. But certainly, Hasidic melodies. Yeah. It was a very musical culture, for sure. The Rebbe writes over here that a person who mamish knows how to make music be'emes can evoke in the heart and soul of the one who is hearing this music, it can evoke kedusha. And that's what the Rebbe told us in Torah Gimel. I told you these two Torahs are very connected. Lashon Hara, music, right? It's 2 pages later. There, it was more literal because we literally learned about the Shtei Tziparim Chayes Taras, and he went on and on about music. Here, he just mentioned Lashon Hara, and I pointed out that metaphorically, the Rebbe says in Azamra, it's about making music. Here, he brings back music again. It's the same thing. Very connected. That to make a joyous melody, and it's a chachma as to how to create and compose a melody in such a way that it will evoke simcha, it will evoke positive energy, ruach nevuah, which is the opposite of atzvus ruach. Because a person, and again, I think he's describing guitar. I don't know any other instrument that you raise your hand up and down, right? Maybe a violin also. It's not really biyad. You're not really playing it. I guess you're using your yad, but you're not. It's not actually using your yadayim, right? Harp also, maybe back and forth. But the way that he says it over here, I mean, I doubt that, David HaMelech didn't play a harp. It didn't play a guitar. He had a harp, right? We know that. But, I mean, listen to his words. You need to lift your hand and lower your hand on the kli that you're playing so that a person can build the music properly. Because the Rebbe had told us again, just Chazara, in Torah Gimel, that music is incredibly powerful and potent. And it is, we know that. There can be music that brings out your lowest impulses, and lahepech, there could be music that brings out gaguim and yearning for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the things that I feel strongly about, again, I don't have scientific, proof for any of this, but it's just a hargasha, a strong hargasha, and it should be clear to you that I obviously know quite a bit about the world of psychedelics, and I've done a tremendous amount of research into it, and I know many, many people, and have really thought this through, and have much to say about it. I've never really spoken so publicly about it. It's a personal, but one thing that I think is really clear is, like I mentioned before, the people in the West who are running these things, even from people who have copied over from not from people, who have taken it from not Jewish people, even though most of them are Yidden, right, who are involved in the psychedelic renaissance, who have taken traditions from South America, they just sort of lifted it over and copied it and pasted it into our culture, assuming that it has to be done exactly that way because that's the way that it's been done for thousands of years. And so essentially what you have is like Amazonian chants and drums and like music that's totally foreign to our consciousness and culture, and that somehow like this is supposed to be helpful. That music carries along with it Amazonian imagery, like foreign strange things. And that's why you have people who come back and they're bewildered because like they saw like, leopards and all this imagery, even if they're sitting in Golders Green or sitting in Stamford Hill, right? More likely. Anyway, not getting into it now, but or Manchester, you'd be really surprised. There are wild things going on. But okay, but wherever it is, I believe it has to be Yiddish music. I feel mamish strongly about that. It has to be Yiddish music. Of course, because that's our culture. That's our neshama. It has to be heilige music. It's not heilige music. It could bring out other things. It has to be mamish heilige music. I'm very strong on that. And I don't really find, even from people, they feel like in order to be authentic, they have to find some shamanic playlist. You don't. It's called your Erev Shabbos playlist, okay? It's called a Kumsitz. It's called Eitan Katz Live in Jerusalem 3. That's what it is. Try that.
Or the Yanuka.
And see, or the Yanuka. Gefällt. Exactly right. I actually know people who, I know people who use both Eitan Katz and the Yanuka together. So that, I believe very strongly on that. Because again, music is such an important part of it. I think, again, in a layman's way, I think music is probably the most important part of it. And it's the least studied. Everybody talks about set and setting. I think the music is crucial. So, I mean, we're learning all about this now, right? To open up your koyach and medame has to be heilige music. That's pasha to me. When the Navi hears this kind of music in the right way, as I'm a kabel mimenu ruach nevuah, it can open up a ruach nevuah in one's mind. Because the person playing the music separated out all the bad energy and is just bringing out beautiful. What good means in Rabbi Nachman is holy. That's what good means. Holy energy, not bad energy. Holy energy. And we need people who know how to run these sessions for people who need help in a holy way, not in an unholy way, carrying quasi avodah zarah. It's like, not sure is it avodah zarah, isn't it? And prayers to spirits, and cleaning all the spirits out of the house with burning thyme and feathers and all this stuff. This is not our thing. This is not our, again, it doesn't have to come with a whole culture around it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put plants in the world that have this crazy ability to take a person and bring them into their psyche in a way that is indescribable. Okay, so use them, right? If you need them, use them in the right way with the right, but it doesn't have to be that we, copy and paste the whole culture around it. Like, you understand what I mean? And so that's what we're speaking about over here. It has to be done in a good way / holy way. Like it said, the advisors to Shaul's people told him, let David HaMelech come and let him play his music, and it will be toivlach daika, and it will be good for you, Because David HaMelech was the quintessential Malchus de Kedusha, right? So he was Shamalakid Mitzarif HaToiv Mitoich Hara. He knew how to look at what appears to be Ra and to identify good energy within it, right? And again, this is all metaphoric in a certain sense, even though it's very practical too, because we're learning about music and the importance of music, etc. But it's also metaphoric because we said before, and the page prior, that we want to look at the world through the lens of Ayin Tova and not Ayin Ra. In other words, that our whole life should be a melody. In other words, that we should go through life and take a look at all that could theoretically be interpreted as Ra with our Koach HaMedam, that it's not Mivurar, standing from a distance. And instead what we want is to feel so close and so intimate with what's taking place that everything that's happening in life is here for me. That was the Lashon that the Rebbe said right in the beginning. Hashem Elokai. Remember? It's a long time ago, but that was the beginning of this Torah. To make a Yichad Hashem, not Elikim, Elokai. It's done for me. It's my God. Everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing that's not Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's Elikim. It's mamish. It seems to be midas adin, midas hagvura, but it's tailor-made for me. It's right for me. It's good for me. It's good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is good. I look at the world in a way of ayin tova, not in lashon hara, slandering this, slandering that, slandering this person, slandering that circumstance, slandering that choice that I made, slandering that inner experience. No, it's all good. It's mamish all good. That means you live in a world of a holy, elevated melody. Because that's what a melody is, to pick out this note, and then that note, and then that note. And then you disregard the rest. You're not sitting on a keyboard and smashing all of the keys. You're carefully picking this one and then that one. And, oh, if you play this, and then those four, that's a beautiful sound, right? And then you leave out everything else. Your whole life becomes a melody kazeh. It's a very important story that Rabbi Nachman told. The story, if I'm not mistaken, it's called the story of the exchanged children. I think it's from that story. It's a Maisa, in the Hebrew it's called a Maisa of the Ben Melech and the Ben Shivcha Shenechlefu. Again, I can't recommend reading Sipurei Maisius enough, just so that appears. Just Sipurei Maisius, just to become familiar with the stories. Very important. The stories themselves have a transportative, mind-opening sort of element to them. But Kitzer, these two babies are switched at birth. The prince and the maidservant's kid are switched. And they grow up, each of them in their own ways, and they both end up being niskarish. They both have to go away from the palace, and they end up lost in a forest, and they encounter each other, and neither of them knows who the other one is. A phenomenal, phenomenal story. They meet the forest man, who takes them to his house that's floating in midair. Lots of interesting things happen. Rabbi Nachman, okay? So, one of the things that happens is when they're with the forest man, and every night they hear all the wild animals that are roaring ferociously, terrifyingly. They're alone in the forest, these two children, teenagers, unclear what age they are, but it's just the terrifying, terrifying sounds. And suddenly, the Rebbe says that they listened a little bit more carefully, and they heard that actually it was the most glorious melody in the world. There's this moment where all the horrific, jarring, ugly sounds that they hear, terrifying sounds, if they hear just a little bit more deeply, it's actually a melody. That captures Rabbi Nachman's whole worldview, and that's it, right? The ability to hear sounds that are not pleasant, and on account of listening more deeply, you can actually hear beautiful melodies. And the forest man, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, gifts them a kli, some kind of tool that you put it on any part of the bria. Is it familiar to you? You know the story? Put it on any part of the bria, and it plays, it just starts to sing. It just starts to... And the Rebbe wanted to give us that kli. That kli is Rosh Hashanah's Yesh Li Kol. Kli is Rosh Hashanah's Yesh Li Kol. Also Rosh Hashanah's Kohen Levi Yisrael. Also Rosh Hashanah's Yitein Lecha Kilvavecha. This is the kli. Rabbi Nachman wanted to give us technology. It's a tech. The Rebbe's... It's tech. The Rebbe is giving you like super advanced meta glasses, like immersive glasses. You look at the world through an overlay of, like they say, rose-colored glasses. I just want Likutei colored glasses. Just take the whole Likutei, condense it, put it on lenses, and I want to look at the whole world through that. That's the kli. And then everything sings. And then all of the scary things, bad things, ugly things, It's all part and parcel of this nigun, and that's again what the Rebbe is describing here. That's the mindset of azamra lelekai ba'oidi, of finding the little bit more to life that will enable you to recognize that azamra, it's all a song. It's all a song. When is it all a song? Ba'oidi. When I see that which I looked at prior and I thought was one thing, I realize, oid, that there's another dimension to it. Having done as kol ha'adam l'kavschos, yeshli kol, to look at the totality of life. Then you can identify the melody. Right? That's a zamra lilikai ba'oidi. V'toiv lach daika, shemelake to mitzarev, hatoiv mitoich harav. Ve'ikar skabtzus ubinin ruach nevua, ho'aidei yad. The primary way that this ruach nevua gets built up is by the hand. Kisham piktoinus haruach, because that's where the ruach is entrusted. Kameshakasa biyadcha afkid ruchi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when I go to sleep at night, I take my ruach and I'm giving it to you as a pikadon, right? I entrust you with my soul. Kameshakasa asher biyadai nefesh kol chai. The ruach kol basar ish. So you see that there's a link between yad and ruach. The zebahaya kenagin hamnagin. Vatihi alav yad Hashem. When the musician played his instrument, then Vatihi alav, again, what's the lashon? Yad Hashem. Yad. Because it was a reflection of the yadayim of the musician who were malakate the ruach toiva from the ruach ra, and that brought the tzaddikim Elisha Shol to prophecy. Nimtzad emerges. When a person plays an instrument with their hand, their job is to isolate the positive chords or the chord progressions or the positive notes from the ruach ra, which is the aspect of ruach nevuah. All of this is related to subjugating the koach hadimyon, which is the power of delusion that causes us to look at the world through non-rose colored glasses and to see the ra and to think that it's ra mamish. Not to make a yichud between Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim, but to think Yud Kei Vav Kei is one reality, that's God's kindness, and then there's like just harsh, negative, horrible, terrible stuff that's no good. Right, that's not making a yichud between them, because I'm not able to realize that the mishpat is also. That's why David HaMelech says in Tehillim, chesed u'mishpat. What word does he use? Chesed u'mishpat, a shira. Right, I will sing a song of chesed u'mishpat. Ba'Hashem ahalel davar, ve'elikim ahalel davar. It all has to do with music and singing, because that's what David HaMelech was. He was malchus to kedusha. And David HaMelech, like we learned previously in the Torah, is set upon by the ra'ayin of three individuals that we learned: Naval, Avshalom, and Shimei ben Gera. It's all David HaMelech. This whole Torah is about David HaMelech. It's all about Malchus. It's an incredible thing, right? It's all about how to live in this world, Malchus, with memory of the Alma Aseh Bina. Right? So this Torah is about the first letter Hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the idealized mother, right? The world of Bina, Olam Haba, a world of unity, a world of tikkun, a world of sweetness. And the last day, which is the world of Malchus, and how David HaMelech managed to reflect that upper world. So it's all about Hachnas Hamadam Shebechinas Ruach Ra, Ruach Shtus, Sheroitza Lifkaim Levalveles Bechinas Ruach Taiv, that seeks to blemish and to confuse a person's good energy, a person's Ruach Taiva, Ruach Nevuah, a person's prophetic spirit. V'hu nichnam v'nizbat al yidei hasimcha ba'al yidei hamanagdim b'yad kanal. And the way to get out of that koach hadimyon that sees evil wherever you look is to enter into joy. Prophecy is joy, right? To be able to see beyond. What's a prophet? Is a chayzeh, means to see, right? We call the prophet a seer. Means he looks at the world with ayin toiva. He sees. I'll tell you an incredible thing. Even Yirmiyahu Hanavi. It's a jarring thing that you find in Echolsa, but in Sefer Yirmiyahu, who was the prophet of doom. I mean, there's no book that's more, it's hair-raising, to read. He mamish saw the Churban coming, Kipshuta. In all of its horrific, we can't imagine what that was. But he himself is full of hope. Some of the most hopeful Psukim al kain ayachel rechaz de Hashem ki loy samu ki loy chalu rachama. I believe that's an Eicha. Right? He himself he didn't just see the destruction. He saw beyond the destruction. That's why the Shabbos after, right, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av is called Shabbos Chazayin. Right? Where we know that we're about to enter into Tisha B'Av. But there's no way for us to properly engage with Tisha B'Av without being firmly rooted in a broader perspective. Chazayin Yeshayahu, right? Yeshayahu is the prophet of goodness and sweetness and peace. But the Nevi'im were chayzim, they were seers. They had a ra, they had a toiv ayin. So b'chol ze b'chinas hachnas hamadam sheb'chinas ruach shtus. To subjugate the ruach shtus, sharoitz alifkam l'vavalas b'chinas ruach taiva, ruach nevuah, that wants to get in the way, to confuse our good energy, our good prophecy. And the main thing is joy. The main thing is good music. The main thing is good energy. Ki ikar is gabras hamadamo aidei atzvos. Says the Rebbe, he says it straight out. You know what our problem is? It's we're depressed. Sadness causes a person to live in dimyan. And you see this kaseder. We are the way that we think. If our thinking is colored over by negativity, we're going to live lives of negativity everywhere we look. It's going to be bad. It's not good enough. It's this and that, and that can actually attract, right? Like that in the lashon of like contemporary society, like the law of attraction that can bring into a person's life terrible things. You find it this way. Like people are negative, they have a lot of things to be negative about. People are positive, good things happen to them. There are channels that are open. Right? So Reb Shlomo Carlebach once said, "It's not that things are bad, and so so you're not happy." He says things you're not happy, so things are bad. We have it all flipped, right? Our avodah is not to wait for things to be good to be happy. Our avodah is to recognize good things will happen when you're besimcha. Find reasons to be besimcha, simple reasons. But if we can get besimcha, if we can surround ourselves by happy people, positive people, those are the people who are going to make it. Even though on a societal level, the more cynical a person is, the more sophisticated they look. It's always that way. Tamid kacha. People are cynical on this worldly social credit level, like, oh, they really know, because like everyone else is naive in this, but the people who are mamish critical about everything, they're in a dimyan of this worldly shtus, are considered to be like the chevreman, It's punkt fakir. Leave those people aside. They're not going anywhere in life. They convince themselves that they see the world as it really is, and I'm telling you, like we said yesterday, they are living in a dimyan hachi gadol. Hachi gadol. You need to surround yourself by positive people.
What if it's a yid? Is it not our responsibility to...
But to help them for sure, as much as you can, but not to be dragged down by them.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning anchor yourself in a good chevra, and then you have the opportunity to reach out. But that's for shalom, not to be dragged down. But what to the world looks naive, we're learning, is the emes la'amitai. Stay in hope. Period. End of story. Live with simcha, right? Or at least do everything that we can to attempt to do so. When you do that, you're not living in dimyan. Ki medame hu bechinas atzvos ruach. Medame is atzvos. Ruach necheya, a lowly, depressed spirit. Ruach ra, bad vibes, bad energy. Shumavaldas ruach taiva, that's going to destroy ruach taiva, ruach nevuah, this prophetic spirit, to be able, again, what's prophecy? To see into the future, to think there's a way, there's hope for the world, right? That yes, Yeshעיהו was the most naive person in the world, right? There's going to be world peace. He was the first one to speak about that, right? Like who else articulated a vision for all of humanity getting together? In what world? You can't get 3 people together without fighting. You're going to get 8 billion plus maybe people, to all come together. And Yeshעיהו was like, yes, absolutely, yeah, totally. I'm a navi. I can see beyond what you can see. Yes, you see until here. I see beyond that. Somebody once said, I don't want to say bad things, there was a Talmud Chacham who said about Rav Kook, that Rav Kook, was a big Talmud Chacham. He couldn't see past his nose. In this worldliness, he couldn't see past his nose. He was a very, very reputable Talmud Chacham who was very, prominent in the yeshiva world, which is why they sort of developed their ideas. Which isn't so nice because he himself, I don't want to give away too many details. But put that aside. The point that I'm making is it's punkt fakeret. Everybody knows Rav Kook's name is Reb Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen, right? Which is Rosh Hashanah Ra'aya, right? The word cook itself means to see, right? Cook in Yiddish is to look, right? Ra'aya means to seer. Lehabech, he saw so far into the future that people couldn't even fathom. We don't know if Rav Kook's vision even started yet. Meaning his vision of what would develop in Eretz Yisrael based on these very shaky, right, foundations of, secular Zionist, anti-religious. It's been 70 years. Like, what? How impatient are we? We've been in exile for 2,000 years. 2,000. I don't even know the math to try to. You guys will help me out. What's the percentage? Right, 70 out of 2,000. 3. Okay, 3% of Jewish history has unfolded as of yet in what Rav Kook believed was the beginning stages of Geula. Rav Kook was under no illusion that what was happening was it. But Rav Kook believed that there was a tenua in the Amma Yehudis at the end of the Sheishes Alfei Shana that would eventually become Kibbutz Galus. You couldn't see past his nose. Look at how horrible it became. You haven't watched anything unfold. It's been like 3 seconds. Like, relax. Wait. Vision. Big picture vision. Yeshayahu is a chayze. Sees till the end of time. No, it's impossible. It's impossible maybe today, but it's not impossible. Yes, we will get there. Everything will be mitukan. The way in which we could be assured that it will not get there is if we don't believe that it can get there. That's for sure true. If nobody believes that it will happen, it will definitely not happen, because it's supposed to happen through us. Hayoim, Hashem says, if you guys will play your role, Mashiach will come. But if you're going to say Mashiach's not coming, so forget the whole thing, then he won't come, and then you'll be right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Always a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the prophet was an atzvas ruach, it became shigayon. If the prophet was in simcha, that prophecy became the right prophecy. We'll just read 2 more lines. To become a Navi, to live in Seichel, beyond the Koyach HaDimyan, to interpret things in the right way, Shubachinas Menagim Bayad, has to be through joy, which is related to the instrumentation. And there's good energy that emerges from that. We're smack in the middle, but we have to end now. And Be'ez Hashem will pick up, just try to remember where we are, from Vizeh HaMenagin tomorrow morning. Thank you so
על כל נשימה שאני